The purpose of these narratives is purely recreational. I sought retribution against my former partner. My wife's actions had a profound impact on my life. Upon unexpectedly encountering her at my new workplace, I experienced a surge of intense anger, prompting me to consider committing acts that I would later regret. 7 years had not been sufficient for me to fully recover from the damage she had inflicted on my life. I had lost everything and was forced to start over from scratch. After she had succeeded in alienating everyone from me, I even relocated to a different state in an attempt to evade her. However, she was present at my new company, where I held a senior executive manager position. My history with Charlene was long and unpleasant, and I would have been perfectly content never to cross paths with her again after our divorce. I met Charlene when I was young and had a successful startup business. We got married just a year after we started dating. This was because she became pregnant with my child. Our relationship began to deteriorate after the birth of our daughter, despite our baby being very young. Charlene spent most of her time at her parents' house. I raised concerns about leaving the baby. Despite the presence of a nanny, my complaints were met with indifference. I even informed her parents, but they sided with her, claiming that I was pressuring her while she was dealing with depression. Over time, our communication deteriorated, and we only discussed matters related to our child when our daughter was a few months old. At that point, I discovered that she was not biologically mine. On the night in question, Charlene had been having an affair with a colleague. I subsequently kicked her out of the house and filed for divorce a few days later. During this period, I was the sole provider since she did not wish to return to work after giving birth, despite the circumstances. I did not cut her financial support because I understood that the child was not to blame. From a legal standpoint, I was not obliged to provide her with financial support during the divorce proceedings. I had evidence of her deceit spanning several years, but she countered with false accusations of emotional manipulation and control. Her parents even provided false testimony about her visiting their house with injuries, which further undermined her credibility. In such cases, the outcome tends to favor women. I was forced to relinquish half of my business in the family home. This serves as a stark reminder of the challenges men can face in such situations. My thriving business took a significant hit due to the false accusations against me. My entire family sided with her because she has always been a convincing actress. This left me with no family support. The business was failing and I was required to make a substantial settlement payment. As a result, I was unable to conduct business in the town where I had previously been a prominent figure. I was therefore forced to relocate, carrying a substantial debt from trying to salvage my business. In contrast, my former spouse enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle, spending my money and holding on to my house for approximately a year. I subsequently found employment at a well-established company. Despite being employed by a reputable company, the majority of my income was allocated towards repaying the financial obligations I had incurred. I ceased attempting to gain insight into her personal life and instead concentrated on rebuilding my own. 7 years after my divorce, I had ascended to a senior position as one of the most successful executives in a highly lucrative company. My company had recently acquired another firm, and my role involved providing guidance and support to the CEO of that company. On my first day back at work following a 7-year absence, I encountered her unexpectedly. She appeared to have aged, but her demeanor remained unchanged. The sight of her evoked a profound sense of anger, prompting me to consider requesting that my company remove her from her position. I had been estranged from most of my family for years due to their erroneous belief that I was an offensive man. They conveniently ignored the fact that I never laid a hand on her and that she manipulated me into marriage following our initial meeting. She paid a visit to my office, putting on a pleasant facade and offering to give me a tour as if we were old friends. I sensed that she knew she was in a difficult position, hoping to soften me up. I promptly declined. I declined her offer, but she lingered in my thoughts throughout the day. I was keen to terminate her employment, but I was unable to do so legally without cause. From that point forward, my primary objective at the office was to make her life as difficult as possible. Based on her employee file, it appeared that she had been working there for the past 2 years and had been performing adequately. I surmised that having exhausted her financial resources, I initiated a course of action designed to inflict as much distress as possible. I presented her with a handwritten note, informing her that although her supervisor had proposed a verbal reprimand for her tardiness, my authority carried greater weight. Consequently, I issued her with a formal warning. She attempted to justify her tardiness by citing her daughter's illness, but I was unmoved. Later that day, she made a minor error in a report I had requested from her. I instructed her to redo it. I instructed her to reprint the entire report, aware that the printer was broken. I knew it would take her a while and that she would be stuck in a stuffy room filled with dust with no air conditioning as the workday was coming to an end. I made her stay back in our spare office to do something utterly pointless purely to waste her time. A few days later, our assistant from the other company joined us, but there was a shortage of officers. I ensured that she gave up her office and relocated to a stuffy room with no ventilation right in the middle of summer when the heat was unbearable. When she had to pack her things, she was so furious that I thought she might explode. I overheard her venting to some colleagues about me, which only motivated me to assign her even more work that she couldn't handle. She constantly worked through lunch breaks and I kept piling on demands. She was relocated to a small, stuffy room with no ventilation, situated in the middle of summer when the heat was unbearable. When she was required to pack her belongings, she was so enraged that I feared she might explode. I overheard her expressing her frustration to colleagues about me, which only motivated me to assign her even more work that she could not handle. She was constantly working through lunch breaks and I kept piling on demands. Furthermore, she was a contender for a promotion that was highly sought after by her colleagues. Despite her exemplary performance in recent months and the high praise she received from her superior, I proposed that the promotion should go to someone who had been with the company for a longer period. I was aware that this suggestion would infuriate her when the promotion recipient was announced. She subsequently entered my office, expressing her intention to exact revenge for what she perceived as my actions. My wife became the subject of gossip in the office due to an anonymous email that was sent to all employees. My superiors were aware of my divorce and had no reason to doubt my integrity, so they simply asked me to stay home for a few days. I enlisted the help of one of the IT professionals to trace the email, which led back to her. I filed a complaint against her for slander, which caused her significant trouble within the company. The company had strict rules against slander and gossiping about employees' private lives. If I had been on the committee, I would have advocated for her termination. However, I had to recuse myself due to my close involvement in the case. She had to stay home for several days because of the email she sent. I almost lost my position in the company due to the incident, but fortunately I did not. I allowed her to remain in the company for a period of time, during which I considered how to encourage her to leave and cease any further contact with me. I found her presence at work each morning to be a source of considerable distress. It was therefore somewhat surprising when she ultimately brought about her own downfall by undermining the company and ultimately resigning. I was not directly involved in the events that transpired at the end of the year, but I was aware of the situation. The company had organized a fundraising event a few weeks before the end of the year, which was to be held at a local venue. During the year in question, I was not directly involved in the planning of the event. My role was to oversee how everything was going. It was also the day the company was announcing its name change. The company had a strict policy against alcohol or drugs, especially when clients were around. However, as the event kicked off, I found myself dealing with a series of problems, the majority of which were coming from her department, which was responsible for the presentation. While the meeting was in progress, some of the interns began acting in a manner that was incongruous with the context of the event. They appeared to be under the influence of a substance that affected their judgment and behavior. One intern even sat at a table reserved for a company investor and fell asleep. It was evident that something was amiss, so I instructed my assistant to remove her from the premises. I could smell alcohol on some of the interns, and the CEO seemed to be under the influence as well. I sensed that something was amiss, as evidenced by the panic in his expression. I was reluctant to involve Charlene, given the circumstances, but her assistance was required with tasks that the interns were supposed to handle. When I requested her help, she declined, stating that she was not an intern and therefore not obliged to assist. As frustration mounted, I suggested that she accompany me to my office to avoid causing a scene. Her anger intensified. Furthermore, she asserted that I was not her superior. Her speech was slurred and her eyes appeared glassy, which was highly unusual for her. I promptly informed the CEO about the situation and left him to oversee the event and keep the guests occupied while I attempted to resolve the situation. We conducted breathalyzer tests on the interns who had initially denied consuming alcohol. As expected, they all failed. All of the interns failed the breathalyzer test. I requested that they reveal the source of the alcohol to avoid further disciplinary action, but they were unwilling to cooperate. I informed them that their contracts would likely be terminated if they continued to withhold information. Finally, one of the interns admitted that they had stolen wine from my office. I was extremely angry and prepared to terminate their contracts, but then they revealed a further bombshell. They confessed that my ex-wife had sent them to retrieve the wine to share before the event. My wife had sent them to retrieve the wine to share before the event. I was unable to comprehend why she would take such a risk, despite being aware of the company's strict policy on staff consuming alcohol. Even I was not permitted to drink at work, as it was a precaution for those who had to drive to and from work events, potentially facing legal trouble if caught drinking. I summoned her to my office and urged her. Given the presence of witnesses, she confessed to her actions, claiming that she had been drinking because she had just discovered her boyfriend was cheating on her. However, I was not inclined to accept her excuses. I found her explanations implausible and could not trust her words. It seemed clear to me that she had intended for the interns to drink excessively and, in the event of an unfortunate turn of events, to blame them. I was determined to make her understand that her actions were highly risky and that her job was in jeopardy. She was in jeopardy due to 2 prior warnings on her record, with a 3rd strike potentially leading to her dismissal. I did not hold back in detailing the humiliation she would face once the truth about her attempt to sabotage the event came to light. It was somewhat satisfying to see her squirm and scramble for excuses. I observed her attempt to justify her actions and provide excuses. I informed her that she was to return home for the remainder of the day and that we would discuss the matter further the following day in my office. Upon her return, she began to cry and pleaded that she needed the job and did not intend for the interns to steal the client's wine. She claimed that she had I informed her that I was aware of her drinking habits and that I would be willing to overlook them if she paid me back. I then proceeded to calculate the amount she owed me. She was visibly shocked by the figure and began begging me to drop the issue. She also mentioned that she wanted to repair our relationship, given the difficulties we had experienced in the past. I informed her of the damage her past actions had caused to my reputation, my home and my shared custody of our daughter. She had moved to a different city and taken everything from me. I had previously been willing to overlook her actions and to care for her, given her troubled past. However, those days were long gone. She went home and I returned to managing our fundraiser by the end of the day. I informed her superiors about her actions and they were furious, eager to fire her immediately. However, I had a different plan in mind. I relished the power to determine her fate within the company, just as she had once controlled my destiny. The following morning, she sent in a revised email, hoping for an immediate departure. However, I had other intentions. By that point, everyone at the office knew what she had done, and she was facing the music. I insisted that she serve a 2. Prior to her departure, the company also sent her an invoice for the stolen alcohol. I threatened to press theft charges if she did not repay the debt. She completed her 2-week notice period, but I ensured that it was anything but pleasant for her. I did her a solid by piling on a ton of work, ensuring that she would not have to face her colleagues. The workers were not pleased with her. They had invested a great deal of effort in organizing the event. During her final 2 weeks at the office, she was clearly unhappy. On the last day, as she packed up her belongings, she paid me the money she owed for the wine. She seemed to suggest that I should be content now that she was jobless. I reminded her that resigning had been her choice. Furthermore, it permitted her to retain at least some of her dignity, which she might not have been able to do had I terminated her employment. When she finally departed from the company, I experienced a profound sense of satisfaction. It seemed as though she had lost everything, much like I once did. Perhaps she could start anew at a different company, but she could not use our company as a reference when seeking employment for several months. I had forgotten about her until I saw her on the streets, among the jobless and homeless individuals, asking for assistance. She looked unrecognizable and appeared to have hit rock bottom, holding a sign that begged for employment or help. I couldn't help but wonder how she had fallen so far, considering the life she used to lead. I lost everything. I did not end up on the streets, but it felt as though karma had come back around in her case. This was a kind of poetic justice for the lie she had told about me, which had cost me everything. It seemed like another one of those stories where karma had its say. I am curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it went too far in how I treated my ex-wife, or do you believe she deserved everything that came her way? That was a fascinating anecdote. Now, let us move on to another equally intriguing one. Stay tuned, as I will now present a further account. I am a 29-year-old woman who has been with my husband, who was 30, for almost 7 years. We got married quickly after we met, and we have 2 children together. He is a wonderful man, handsome, well-educated, and has a good-paying job. He has always treated me with respect. My close friends and family often remind me how fortunate I am to have him and what a great guy he is. I used to think of us as soulmates. However, about a year ago, I made a regrettable error. I attended a birthday party with a group of friends and consumed a considerable quantity of alcohol. I then engaged in sexual intercourse with a man who had been flirting with me throughout the evening. It was the first time in years that I felt so carefree. I cannot explain why I did it, but the moment I realized what I had done, I ordered a taxi home and tearfully confessed everything to my husband. I felt overwhelming regret and self-loathing. Initially, he remained silent and calm, but eventually he informed me that he wanted a divorce. After much pleading, we decided to attend counseling sessions. However, during these sessions, he demonstrated a lack of engagement. He would often be found scrolling on his phone when asked about his feelings or what he could do to improve our relationship. His responses were often negative, and on occasion, he would make hurtful comments directed at me. Furthermore, he seemed indifferent and remained silent, even when we attempted to involve him in the conversation. Over the past year, I have attempted to salvage the relationship by doing everything I can. The institution of marriage has led me to perform tasks that I find disagreeable in order to satisfy my partner. I have assumed responsibility for all domestic duties, including cooking and cleaning, without assistance from him. I have fulfilled his requests, regardless of their nature, and have experienced moments of anger, during which he has hurled insults at me, sometimes in the presence of our children. However, he has consistently demonstrated affection towards our children and has never spoken negatively about me in their presence. On occasion, if I fail to meet his expectations, such as engaging in certain sexual acts, he has threatened to divorce me or has brought up my past infidelity, attributing blame to me for all his perceived shortcomings. He states that marrying me was a mistake and uses hurtful words. Furthermore, he has been communicating with other women when I confront him about it. He immediately brings up my past infidelity. I do not have any concrete evidence that he has been meeting other people behind my back. My sole desire is for things to return to the way they used to be. On one occasion, I mentioned seeing a message from another woman on his phone. He grabbed my hand, took me to the main hall, and pointed to the door, stating that the exit was right there if I wanted to leave. He made it clear that he demonstrated a lack of consideration for my thoughts and feelings. I feel as though I have lost the caring and loving husband I desire, and he has transformed into a person I no longer recognize. I hold a profound love for him, yet I find myself unable to imagine being with anyone else. I experience regret for my actions on a daily basis, and I am consumed by the desire to restore my family to its former state of harmony. I am striving to restore my marriage, although I am uncertain as to its viability. I am unsure what I am seeking to achieve by sharing this information. Perhaps I simply needed to express my feelings. I wish I could undo the damage caused by my actions. I have omitted certain details from my account. Regarding our therapy sessions, I wish to clarify that I assumed full responsibility for my actions and did not blame my husband. It was not until the therapist suggested that my husband might have done things that caused me to withdraw and potentially led to my infidelity that our sessions took a different turn. I am contemplating changing therapists to see if we can make progress. I genuinely want to make this work. Today, I confronted my husband, as many people have suggested I do. I had a feeling that he might not want to try anymore and simply wants to move on. I initiated the conversation with the intention of conveying my comprehension of his distress and that, should he no longer desire to salvage our marriage and instead opt for a dissolution of the union, I would acquiesce and permit him to pursue other avenues. I articulated my profound affection for him and reassured him of its enduring nature. He remained silent for a moment before approaching me and embracing me, and we both shed tears. It was the first instance in a considerable period of time that I had experienced such authentic displays of affection from him. After a few minutes of embracing and crying, he released me and requested that we engage in a discussion. He proceeded to convey his continued love and concern for how he finds it challenging to move on from the incident. He stated that he experiences periods of intense anger, not only due to his resentment of my actions but also because of vivid mental images of what I did that persist in his mind. He is unable to dismiss these images. He explained that while he had opportunities to be unfaithful to me over the years, his love for me and our children always outweighed any fleeting pleasures. He asserted that he could not have done to me what I did to him because his love for me was too profound to cause me harm. Hearing him say this caused me to experience a further breakdown. He then went on to express that he feels as though something inside him is broken and irreparable. He admitted to chatting with other women in recent months but emphasized that he never engaged in any physical or romantic activities with them because it did not feel right. My suggestion that he could move forward was the first time he felt like I truly understood his inner turmoil and the extent of his emotional pain. He mentioned that he is unsure about our future but, for the time being, he wants to be single and focus on self. I informed him that I would be amenable to signing the divorce papers should he wish to proceed with divorce and that I had no expectations of financial compensation from him. I reiterated that any assets acquired during the marriage would remain his and that I had no desire for financial support, despite his higher income. This response prompted him to shed tears and he expressed hope that he might be able to forgive me at some point in the future. He believes that a period of separation will be beneficial for both of us, allowing us to reflect on our lives and consider the best course of action moving forward. He plans to consult with a lawyer and the divorce papers will be submitted in approximately 1 week. I have no intention of meeting someone new after the divorce, and I do not desire to do so. I genuinely hope he returns to me one day so that we can restore our former family unit. I deeply regret my actions and feel immense remorse, having realized that I have lost the one person who was my soulmate. It seems that divorce is inevitable. Story 3: My boyfriend and I have been in a relationship for approximately 6 months. He is a fantastic individual. We hardly ever argue and he is generally very laid back. However, there is a situation with my friend Matt that is causing some tension. Matt and I have been close friends for many years and we share a deep passion for our dogs and our related careers. Our days are mostly filled with activities such as hiking, running, training, agility, disc coursing and more, all involving our. Despite the aforementioned activities, Matt and I do not engage in romantic relationships. This is somewhat peculiar, given the evident physical attraction between us. However, we have never taken our friendship to that level. The reasons for this remain unclear, potentially due to timing or other circumstances. Currently, my boyfriend does not object to my friendship with Matt. He is not the jealous type and has his own circle of friends. There have never been any arguments or fights over my spending time with other guys. Indeed, my boyfriend and Matt get along well and even hang out together from time to time. However, there is a complication: Matt and I often engage in passionate debates. Our discussions are not characterized by conflict, they are, rather, spirited conversations. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is very passive and does not enjoy arguing. His typical response is either to agree with me or to calmly state his viewpoint and bring the conversation to a close. I admire his ability to avoid conflict, and I have been working on developing a similar capacity for openness. My boyfriend and I frequently engage in outdoor activities together, including hiking. On occasion, Matt joins us, although he is less inclined towards the outdoors than we are, and thus occasionally declines to participate. I consistently extend invitations to Matt for all our joint activities, with the exception of those related to work, given that he has his own occupation. Recently, we embarked on an overnight hiking trip with our dogs, during which Matt encountered difficulties with his tent. It proved unstable and prone to collapsing. Matt proposed that he sleep outside, but I suggested that he relocate his sleeping bag to my larger tent, as it would accommodate both of us and the dogs, plus there was a chance of rain. Both Matt and I found ourselves in an awkward situation, but he agreed to share the tent, and I assumed my boyfriend wouldn't have an issue with it. Earlier that day, Matt had spent quite a bit of time shirtless and I couldn't help but sneak some glances. I mean, he's in great shape and I've always been physically attracted to him. I don't know if it was the pent-up energy from that or what, but there was a moment inside the tent where things felt far from an initial state of innocence. The atmosphere had become noticeably tense. It is somewhat regrettable that I did not take the initiative to leave the tent at that moment. However, I was overcome with a sense of guilt and remorse, coupled with an overwhelming feeling of arousal. Throughout the night, I experienced a rollercoaster of emotions, including guilt, discomfort, and a persistent sense of arousal. The following day, our interactions remained largely unchanged. While there might have been a slight shift in our demeanor, neither of us initiated any significant changes. Matt initiated a discussion about the previous night's events when he dropped me off at my house. He gave me a hug, which he had done on numerous occasions before. However, this hug felt different. It lingered for a longer period than usual, and it did not feel like a friendly embrace. I will admit that I was reluctant for the hug to end. I am currently awaiting the return of my romantic partner, cognizant of the necessity to inform him of the aforementioned incident. However, I am uncertain of the optimal method to convey this information. The overwhelming sense of guilt is causing significant distress, and it appears that I have violated my partner's trust by involving Matt in this situation.